You're listening to Soho Radio. My name's Georgie Rogers, and I'd like to welcome my guest, Hayden Thorpe.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks.
It's been a little while since we've chatted. I mean, oh God, probably on the first solo album.
Yeah.
Maybe we did a radio interview.
We did.
then.
I talked a lot about ego for some reason.
And
Strange interview.
No, I think always very interesting. And that was, God, it feels like a lifetime ago, but that was obviously like a big transition then, because that was your first solo post Wild Beasts.
Right. Yeah, of course.
And then there was another album, Moondust for My Diamond, which is 2021. And now you're back with a new album, Ness, your third solo album.
Right.
So how have you been? How's it going? How are you feeling about putting another album into the world?
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, this one is a little bit different. It's a collaboration with Robert MacFarlane, nature writer, big hero of mine. So, and Stanley Dunwood has done the artwork of Radiohead fame. And it's alongside the National Trust. So it's kind of a bit of a broader record, and I can be less self-obsessed. So I'm enjoying kind of these chats about it, because it's less about my experience, as it were.
Yeah, it was something that sort of informed the inspiration for the album, which was going to the Orford Ness, which is in Suffolk. Yeah. And I want to ask you all about that, because it sounds fascinating, this place that I've never been, and I had never heard of it. And you said the writer Robert MacFarlane. So how did the two worlds? How did you come to know Robert MacFarlane's work, and then Orford Ness off the back of that? Well,
after we spoke on the first record, Diviner, obviously the world went to
shit.
Yeah, and as part of that kind of grand shit, I ended up back in Cumbria, where I grew up.
Yeah,
and kind of amongst the fells and kind of amongst the natural world again. And to be honest, having lived in London and kind of fancied myself as a bit of a urbanite, it was quite shocking. I felt, sense of failure, sense of loss, kind of dislocation, actually. So I discovered Rob's writing, and it really enabled me to get back into this landscape and the fells that I grew up around. So I found his language really quite important to me. And we connected through the Kendal Mountain Festival, and we did an improvised performance of his book Ness, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I can't say I've ever made a record so accidentally.
Yeah.
I mean, it became a very deliberate, very ambitious and grand project, as it were, but I have to say its beginnings were kind of quite haphazard. It could quite easily never have been made, which is kind of what's so beautiful about it, I think.
Yeah.
It's a lot of records that have to be made so deliberately to kind of account for the market or to reach the algorithms. But this one, I have to say, was made purely because it demanded to be made. And this place, Orford Ness, which is what the book is about, Ness, it's a strange kind of desert off of Suffolk, where the Ministry of Defence first developed weaponry during the First World War, the Second World War, and then during the Cold War. So it's got all this kind of atomic nuclear secrecy. It's kind of quite Oppenheimer in atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it has since been bought by the National Trust. So since 1993, it's been rewilded. So it's become a really precious habitat. So a place that was once only good for bombing, that was destroyed through all kinds of atrocious acts, is now protected by the greatest protection laws in Europe, environmental protection laws. So in a way, I feel like the dark history of Ness and the kind of journey it's been on is a very human story, where appalling things happen, damaging things happen, but things restore. It's a story of healing, really. And in a way, kind of that story became very personal to me. Yeah.
I mean, I bet looking forward, if you had a crystal ball, you wouldn't have expected to have been collaborating with the National Trust on an album.
No, another absolute nightmare. As any bureaucracy is, but I have to say, it's wonderful, kind of, as I said, to not make work about yourself.
Yeah.
Although I do feel very personally about the record, in promoting it, there's all these amazing people like Rob and the National Trust and all these people who make work, who give a voice to things that aren't human. like rivers and seals and hares, and in an age where your work is supposed to be so self-summoned that you're supposed to draw a mythology out of yourself. I find these things at this point in time far more interesting than myself, especially at a time where, there are environmental things to kind of bring into the equation. It's hard to speak about them and not sound overly political, overly soapboxy, self-important. And this kind of became a vehicle to kind of make what I deem to be relevant work to me, but without kind of flag waving.
And you talked about how it's been rewilded. So in terms of how it looks, is it, sort of like these bombed structures and then flowers going through it and nature and animals? Is that sort of how it feels?
It is. It's otherworld. It's like a kind of Tarkovsky film. People say it looks like kind of black and white Tarkovsky, like kind of gothic and surreal. And literally there'll be a metal casing blown open, this sheer steel metal blown open quite visibly, and inside it will be like a bouquet of daisies. Or the laboratories where they built these bombs have now been they're in ruin really, and there are these beautiful green, almost look like ornate Japanese gardens growing out of them. It's quite spectacular to see, and kind of an interesting experiment as to what happens when people aren't there. What happens when you don't prioritize people in a space? You know what? The place does absolutely fine. Like, they're good.
Yeah.
So it is kind of post-apocalyptic, you'd call it, because they were literally planning for the apocalypse there. It was that kind of end of days era.
Yeah, sort of planning for all this destruction. And then beauty grows out of it when it's allowed to just... It was sort of like the pandemic, how in lots of cities, when everyone was in lockdown, all the animals would come back into the cities. And
Exactly.
Beautiful. I mean, not if there's like a lion cruising down the street, but... Exactly. But it's quite amazing, seeing that, I guess.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And did you spend a lot of time there? Because which is one of the tracks off the record that we're going to play, that was one of the first tracks that you wrote after spending some time there. So, what was it like being in this environment and gathering the inspiration for the tracks and feeling it, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I'd worked on the record for 9 months before I'd even gone there. So it was really the book, Rob's language, that was bringing it to life for me, and also Stanley Donwood's illustrations. So I kind of had a very elaborate, quite a rich view of it already. So when I went there, it did feel like I was living inside a story. It was really surreal, and it is otherworldly. You have to get a boat over to the island, so you really feel like you're crossing over to the other side. And your sense of scale, it completely warps. So there are huge hares there, like hares the size of cats, and beautiful seals bobbing up and down, and in the hot air, the view warps, the horizon warps, so everything feels kind of psychedelic. So when I first went, I did write a lot of songs in quick succession after visiting, just the sheer feeling of being there. And also they do have a decommissioned nuclear missile there.
Right.
So when you see this object that is no bigger than a kitchen table, probably smaller than, and you think that object of this size can annihilate a city, your whole sense of scale and proportion is completely kind of discombobulated. So you're left with all these feelings, and also Stanley Donwood was on the visit too, so I got to kind of spend some time with him and how he sees it, and he has some beautiful lines, how the whole landscape is 2/3 land, 1/3 sky. When you're there, you have an ever-present horizon, so you have a straight line through everything. And that bled into the songs, so the song arrangements are often 2/3 of one thing and then 1/3 of another thing, and kind of these languages speak to each other.
Yeah. Well, let's play They. Is there anything you can say about it? I mean, you sort of set it up beautifully, but is there anything?
They is like the summer song, because Ness is a story of darkness, but it's also a story of hope, I think, and the power of the natural world and the power of healing. It's a story of healing, really. So They is definitely Ness in summertime.
Okay, let's hear it. This is new from Hayden Thorpe. It's called They. So that is They from Hayden Thorpe from the new album Ness, which we're getting on September 27th on Domino Records. That sounds so beautiful.
Oh, thanks. It does sound good out of the radio, doesn't it?
It does, and these speakers are just lovely.
Aren't they? Yeah.
It sounds really, really, really gorgeous, and that's really just, it's like you say, summery and lovely and light and beautiful. Talk to me a little bit about your vision sonically, and because there's other people that have contributed to the record and orchestral parts and things.
Yeah.
So how did you want to kind of do the production of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the lyrics were written, obviously, and I adapted the book, so the words were there. So I think as someone who usually writes songs and writes the words, I think a lot of the meaning and intention is implied in the words, obviously. So the words do a lot of heavy lifting for you, but because I didn't have control over the words, I became far more interested in telling the story through production. So it's the first record that I've produced and engineered. Partly because no one else is mad enough to spend 10 months on a record about a nuclear desert off of Suffolk. So, there are restrictions to that. But also, as the record kind of took hold, I thought, there's an essence here, there's something very special and beautiful that I have to go on this journey to discover. So I gave myself a month to make it, and it did take 10. Which, yeah.
Set a deadline.
Right.
Yeah, times it by 10.
Yes, exactly. So it got a bit out of hand, and I had, a holiday booked and all this, and ended up, being various studios around the world, just kind of bedroom studios. But, I guess what's really been the great discovery of the record has been the contributors, and how lucky I feel that such amazing minds have contributed to it. So Rob himself, Robert MacFarlane, visionary writer, and Kerry Andrew did all the choral arrangements, and they're just extraordinary kind of mind for choral arrangement, and really blew open my idea about what vocals are supposed to do. And my dear friend Jack McNeil of Propeller Ensemble did the orchestral arrangements, and he's a clarinet player. And, I hadn't paid much attention to the clarinet before this record, and that's what you could hear on They. But my God, it's a soulful instrument.
It is,
right?
Really beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, like we're so much more familiar with, say, the sax in popular music. But the clarinet is much more wooden. It's made of wood versus the sax made of metal. So somehow it feels more naturalistic and sounds like trees to me.
Yeah.
And it's very soulful. So that was a great revelation. And Jack also wrote parts for trombone and trumpet. So it became a crash course for me, miking up trombones and trumpets and putting those kind of sounds next to synths, and kind of became a real kind of roller coaster, kind of a theme park of sound for me.
Yeah. And with your other records, you were sort of saying like this one wasn't so personal. It wasn't sort of like mining the vault of personal experiences. Although I do feel like with your past records as well, you do tend to weave in themes that aren't just, I'm going to make an album about love or experience. Do you know what I mean? You'll talk, like you say, when Diviner, you talked a lot about ego. There's just other things that come into it. But how was it sort of not having to be like, right, okay, what am I gonna write a record about, feelings wise and emotions? Obviously, you said it's also been personal for you, but how was it kind of just taking yourself a bit out of
I learned a lot.
Minute? What did you learn?
I don't think songwriters talk about learning a lot. I think because the great demand for content and for material, the great turnover of material means it's not often you get a pause in your making life to just say, I'm open here, I want to learn some new stuff. So just to have the language of someone else's tongue in my own mouth, and just the journey of what a song can be. So for instance, on the record there's a song called She.
I was going to ask you about that.
Right. So She is a very romantic, kind of sensual song. And when my partner heard it, she was like, who is this about? Seriously, this better be about me. And I was like, you know what? It's about moss and lichen.
Yeah.
And truly.
Love it.
It's like this love
was
song.
Was she like, oh.
Right. I've got a weirdo on my hands.
Sorry, darling, but it's about moss and lichen.
we've got problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but what's so beautiful about that is if you think about the dispersal of spores and the natural action of, say, fungi when they are spreading their spores to kind of create new life, that is the same action as within human nature, to disperse, to go forth looking for your other or, another.
Yeah.
And these symmetries within nature and ourselves are just so ever present. It's just that we as human beings have decided that we are somehow separate or superior or different, but we're just organisms.
Yeah.
So, and if you think about love, we definitely define love as being a human thing. But if you expand that into the natural world, love is an aspect of consciousness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's everywhere.
It's not only on the apps, it exists in the ether.
Yeah. Yeah, and in nature, and
right.
There's versions of it.
And nature
wherever.
loves us back. The action of healing and restoration is a loving action,
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because I was going to ask you about She, just because it was, listening to the record, it was just one of the tracks that really stood out to me, as well as They and He. Just the melody of it is
thanks.
Really, really stunning.
Thank you. Yes, that was a very natural song for me. It was kind of like it's like a kind of a Motown-y. It was my version of Motown, if Motown were about gardens.
Yeah. I'm going to listen to it with new ears.
Yes, yeah.
That lichen and moss. So Hayden, what's happening next then? Are you thinking like you're going to do a couple of natural trust gigs, aren't you?
Yeah, we are.
Orford Ness.
Yeah, we're going to take ferry loads of people over to the island, and we're going to play in the Naffy, which is actually where they invented radar. And we're going to play around the missile. So it's going to be quite a special atmosphere, and Rob MacFarlane will be there and he'll speak a little bit about it. And we have Delia Stevens, who's the most incredible orchestral bass drum player who plays on the record. She's coming over. And again, talking about instruments, I mean, if you are in the room with an orchestral bass drum, it's a visceral experience. I mean, I'm used to drum machines and kind of rock kits, as it were. Some of those vibrations are deep. So yeah, I think it's going to be a kind of very sensory experience. So there's those shows happening at the end of September, 28th, 29th, and the last tickets are still available, and I'd really recommend it. It's a Graceland. It's a real journey. And also there's going to be a London show at King's Place, 7th of February next year, and that venue is quite unfamiliar to people in my experience, and it's just an astonishing room. It sounds beautiful. Have you been there?
No.
Oh my God, it's like wood panelled, beautifully treated room. I think it's like the best secret venue in London, really.
Awesome. That would be really great. And are you thinking about next record, next projects?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say I paused my inner work to do Ness because it felt like such an amazing opportunity, and I needed to put it down for a bit. But yeah, I think, this record has taught me a lot about production, a lot about the journey of a record. And in a strange way, spending 10 months on a strange record feels like my artistic responsibility in a way, I had the good grace, the fortune of Domino Records backing me as a 21-year-old in a strange band called Wild Beasts, sending us to make these, frankly expensive, elaborate albums in Sweden with these top producers. And this, it was an age, it wasn't so long ago, but it was an age where the expectation was you sent your band into this full-blown studio to realise the vision. And I feel like I still have that kind of knowledge in me and that want in me to make obscure, unlikely records, but that are equally ambitious and beautiful, So I think it feels like it's triggered something in me. Yeah.
Sounds great. Tell me a bit about He, and then we'll play it.
Yeah, so he's kind of, in a strange way, it's my ode to kind of the Rolling Stones. It's an odd one for me. I've never kind of wanted to make that kind of like rock and roll track, but if you listen to those recordings, they're quite odd in that the drums are quite quiet, really, and the bass is like on one side of your ear. It's in mono on one side, and they're quite disorienting in recording. You've got Keith Richards, and Mick Jagger on one side, and then the rest of the band on the other. And I was kind of fascinated by, maybe that's why Keith Richards' guitar sounds so good and so much attitude. It's because it's kind of tucked in.
Yeah.
And we're used to our production nowadays being so kind of front forward. So that was my starting point, really, was like, if I distort the proportions of this, can I get that kind of feel? And yeah, it just felt like an attitude track. The words felt like an attitude, and yeah, I think this is probably the most ambitious song on the record. There's full-blown choir section and brass section, and there's a spinet, which is a 17th century keyboard.
Okay, cool.
And there's a sackbut.
What's a sackbut?
Which is an early trombone.
Okay.
So
a prehistoric trombone.
Yeah. So keep your ear out.
I'll see if I can listen to it. Hear it,
spot the sackbut.
Spot the sackbut, everybody. Thank you so much, Hayden Thorpe, for coming in.
Bless,
it's been
thanks.
lovely to see you, and it's a beautiful record. And it's out on the 27th of September on Domino Records, Ness. This is from it. That's it for today's show. I'll be back in 4 weeks' time. And yeah, thanks, Hayden.
Oh, thanks, Georgie.